Hi, it's Roland. Welcome back to Practical Plastic. So for today's episode, we are going to do the MPC Pontiac GTO Super Stocker. Looks to be a neat kit. Gonna flip the camera around so we can get a look at these parts and get started with the build. Alrighty. Alright, so in the previous episode on the channel, I did a more in-depth look at the parts, but since we're going to do the build in this one, just going to go through it real quick as a refresher. So, Pontiac GTO Super Stocker from MPC. Let's take a look. So we have instructions. They are rather simple, traditional fold-out type, exploded diagrams, building it piece by piece, and there we go. So that should work out just fine. We have a lovely decal sheet. So we can do a number of different things. You can follow the box art, which I pretty much plan on doing because I think the box art looks pretty cool. Or you can go in different directions using these other stripes or adding more stripes. Of course, how you choose to build it is up to you. And now we have our pieces. We have the body. The big plus on this is the wheel wells are already hogged out for the oversized tires, and we already have the opening for this crazy internal exhaust system that will wrap up over the engine, come through the interior, and vent out the side, which is very, Mad Max Road Warrior type looking. So I love it. Clear parts, nice and clear. It's just a front windshield, rear window. One piece pops right in. That should be good. The tires, absolutely awesome. Great tread pattern. Of course, pad printed. Nice white stance. These should look really mean under there. Nice simple chrome sprue. There's only a couple of parts here, but it's a racing car, so you're not going to get a whole ton of that. What is a little different here in terms of building, a two-piece frame. So we have nice locators. I've already been playing with this a little bit. That will go together like that. And you can already see, just laying the body over it, front, rear, they are centered in the wheel wells. So we know that location is accurate. And this, I believe, goes on somehow like that, forms the rest of our bracketing for rear suspension elements. So that's a pretty neat design and should look pretty cool when it's built up. And then quickly going through our sprues, suspension elements, fuel cell, exhaust pipes, more roll cage elements, some body panels, interior, more roll cage, radiator, steering wheel, another inner body panel, meaty differential, rear leaf springs, wheels. My plan is to just do these in white. Those white wheels against the pad printed tire. Now that's just in the raw plastic, but with a shot of flat white on there and black lug nuts, that's going to look really cool. How do I know that? Well, I have done that before. Now this is an old kit that I built many moons ago, but you can see they are the same tires. They were not pad printed. I had done the Goodyear, but that flat white wheel with the black and I did silver lug nuts in there. I think for this one I'm just going to do black, but that white wheel against the tire with the Goodyear, that looks really neat, and that's what I'm going to do. We have the hood, some more body elements, and just out of curiosity to check if I don't keep dropping it, the hood's going to sit in there. There is some flash, but that fits pretty well. No warping issues. In general, the parts look pretty good. There doesn't seem to be a particular problem with flash or mold misalignments, anything like that. So cleanup should not be anything unreasonable. And there's our engine and the sides of our roll cage. In the meantime, I will just say thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, like, share, hit that alert bell, all that good YouTube stuff. And when I come back, we'll already be getting into doing some building. Alrighty. Okay, so here we go. As I showed, been doing a little building. This is a dry fit mock-up, what I have here right now, which is the topic of what I wanted to stop and talk about here. When I was looking through the instructions, now again, they are your pretty standard instructions from, AMT, MPC, round two, the conglomerate there. But considering the more I looked at the kit, the more I got the feeling that this was originally a stock car that they then modified the kit to build this racing version with the frame inside. Now, with these older kits, sometimes when kits were repurposed, they give you the parts, but you kind of have to work it to make it come together. And being that I suspected that, I was a little more scrutinizing, or put extra scrutiny into how this was going to go together. And I was also trying to consider as to what would be the best approach for when I go and have to paint all of this. So what I did, obviously I started working on the frame, but I built the roll cage, but I did not glue it to the body, the chassis pan. So now this I can remove, and I can paint all of this, and when it's time, it can be glued on. Likewise, the rear seat delete and this cover, assembled this, and I'll talk about that because there's a discussion with that. And then that brings us to the frame itself. So I joined the two halves, put this will be the bracing for the rear springs and the rear bumper, and this long single piece, which is a pretty neat molding, I have to say, for the time the kit was done. This was all molded in one piece, so glued that on the front. So this gave me what I considered a working chassis. Originally, I was going to leave the rear seat delete out and not include it in the kit, because I thought, well, then you can look in, you can see all the components of the rear suspension. But then, of course, I was like, well, you can't turn the kit over and you'll be able to see everything in there anyway. So fine, let's put this in. So when I sided this up, there were 2 notches. I cut these pieces off like so. And to show you how the piece originally looked, here, this is how the piece originally looked. All right, as a comparison. So these 2 slots right here were, or are there, for the mystery frame member to reach through and catch the frame member that's hanging in space. Now, oddly enough, in the instructions, they show that just floating there. And even down here in the final assembly, just floating there, nothing tied to it. So it's like, okay, no big deal. I can make that fit in there. We have a slot in the piece, but when I sided the piece over that rear frame member, the original cutout on the piece ended right here. So way below where the frame member actually is, so fine. These side pieces that were originally came down, I removed those, opened this up. So now those little frame members, the mystery frame member, can go through and engage that, and we'll be able to see that in final detail. Then the other thing I realized was in here, where the roll cage now has to poke through, there, that did not line up either. So when that sits there now, when I do the back to the dry fit mock-up, it can, oops, this is why dry fitting takes some patience. There we go. So we can drop this in there like so, and that sits in there, and now everything works out okay. Yes, it's a messy glue joint, but I'm going to fix that with a little tea. No, just kidding. When the paint is on there, you won't really notice that, so that will all side up just fine. And there we go. Now, the next thing I'm wondering about is how this is actually going to mount into this body, because I don't notice any real definitive mounting points, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Now, speaking of the body, I did show opening up the lower vents in the front. Nothing really special there in terms of hobby skill, just a little patience. The body itself, I only did some sanding. Over here, there were 2 pretty prominent parting lines, so I just sanded those off, so that's cleaned up. Otherwise, the body was just fine. The only issue I'm going to look into is when you lay the hood in there, it sits on these 4 ledges, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These 2 are nice and solid, they're fine, but these 2 up front, I don't know if it was a short shot, but one of them is actually hanging loose, and the other really isn't molded that well. So I'm going to cut these out and just use my stock styrene and just put 2 pieces there, so that looks a little bit better. So that's that. So a little explanation on that to get that sorted out, but like I said, not a big deal, but it just goes again to the point of, you know, test fit, test fit, test fit. Can never stress that enough with models, you know, especially when you get into kits that have been repurposed, and especially again, so for those kits that are from older molds. So, you know, they give you everything in the box to build the car. There's no problem there, but you know, you do have to take a little extra effort to make sure that it's really going to go together. That all said, you know, I'm already loving the way this looks, even without any paint, just, you know, sitting dry in white plastic. This this whole chassis carriage assembly, this is good. I am hoping, but this should look really cool once it's all built up. And you know, you have these awesome tires on there, so very much looking forward to that. But right now I am in a good position to start painting. So that is the story as it stands at present. And the first thing I will do is look for that piece that I just flung off to the side accidentally. Alrighty, so back to it. NT, the elixir of life. Okay, and here we go with airbrushing using my trusty Works airbrush. No mystery here. I do have the film sped up 2 times, but the important point is you got to keep moving. Don't have any dwells. This way you won't have any flooding of paint. As long as you keep moving, check your angles to make sure you get full coverage. It'll turn out just fine. Okay, so let's talk about paint. It's very early on a very cold morning. Couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, so figured why not talk about painting. So as you can see, and with the aid of a cup of tea, going over what I did here, showed about airbrushing the body and the hood. Wound up doing 3 coats of that Tamiya yellow. And yes, it is flat, but I will be putting gloss coat on there afterwards. So, you know, just because it says flat or gloss, you can always do a top coat and make it whatever sheen that you want. The 2 things I want to talk about with this body. One, you know, because it is a racing car, all the headlights and marker lights, everything, door handles are covered up with these, you know, cover plates, what would be on a real car. But here they are just body molding details. Now, went in there with a brush and painted them fine. In terms of ease in doing the kit, it would have been nice if these had been separate pieces. Then you could paint them, put them on the body, and then they would be, well, basically perfect. Having to hand brush it, you know, I'm pretty happy with the results I got. I do have to go back and do my touch up with yellow. I haven't done that yet, but that is something to be mindful with this kit, that will take either a steady hand or very careful masking. Whatever the case, this does require a little bit of extra attention. All of the parts here that you see that are aluminum, I did do an initial flat black undercoat, and that's just to give the aluminum a nice color depth. A lot of times metallic colors, especially if you're painting over a light undercolor like this yellow, will seem pale, but you put flat black underneath and the metallic on top, and they really then they're very vibrant. So the hood, pretty straightforward. Just did the you know, latch downs to hold it in place, and which were molded on there. Just painted out that detail, and the grate with a little panel liner. That's done, and then there's everything else. So I had mentioned initially about airbrushing the roll cage, but I went ahead and did it all the old-fashioned way with a brush. Reason being that when I looked at it, I thought, you know, it is a roll cage and there's more empty space than object. So most of what I'm spraying is going to be ending up on my drop cloth, and that just seemed counterproductive. So I went ahead and brushed it. 1 coat because that went on white plastic, 2 coats on here because for the chassis and frame I did end up doing a flat black primer, and then the aluminum, because I figured it would be easier to do that and then come back in and paint the frame and get all of that done. So, you know, it's just a matter of being a little patient doing the brush work, because it does take some time. But doing a complex structure like this with an airbrush, I really don't know if it would go much faster, because there's so many different angles and that you have to get. Not that time is the only deciding factor, but you know, let's face it, time is always the golden commodity. And if you're looking at something and thinking, oh my God, it's going to take so long, it sort of de-incentivizes you to, you know, jump into it and get it done. But in this case, you know, just looking at it and deciding on a strategy. Everything else, as you can see, a lot of flat black just as a base coat and a base part color, and then adding in detail colors to bring out those details. One thing that I would mention as a minus on this one, it's a racing dashboard, so it's Spartan, but the gauges on there, the kit does not supply you with gauge decals, nor do you get any kind of prominent mold relief on these gauges. The mold depth is very shallow on the detail. So I tried to do what I could with it. I just painted them with white face, racing style gauges, went in with a fine brush and very dry, but a dry brushed to bring out the black dials and some of the hash marks in there, and then silver to get the gauge ring, had to touch it up. And then last thing, I took a drop of my future floor polish stuff there, Pledge floor polish, whatever, and put a drop on top of each gauge to simulate a gauge lens, and hopefully the camera is catching a little bit of that reflectivity as I tip it. This is always an exciting point of any model for me, because I have said before, I enjoy building more than I enjoy painting, and I put an asterisk on that because while I'm doing this painting, you know, I get really excited to do the build because the painting really brings the build to life. You know, without paint, it's just a bunch of white plastic, and it may look cool, but it's monochromatic. You know, it's boring. But the color is what really brings it to life, and obviously what personalizes your build in the colors you choose. So there you go. Just as a note, I just used all paints and colors that I had, and this, again, I have said before, you know, as you go through kits and you build up a color palette, you know, you'll have a nice assortment of colors to choose from. So while you're doing a kit, why not put that to work for you and use some of those colors to bring out little details here and there. So, like for example, the seat belts that I did, you know, that was a molded detail on the seat, but I had this Testors neon green or lime green. I used it on the Subaru Brat build I did a while ago, but you know, it's just a different color to throw in there and bring out something else to aesthetically enjoy once the build is done. So the chrome, it is very bright chrome. I did put dull coat on everything except the fuel cap and the arm of the shifter, just because I felt like it was not really blending great with the way the rest of the kit was looking, so I dulled it down. I then went and on the rear bumper, hopefully this is, yes, that is nice apparent. Okay, so you have the dull coated chrome, and then the covers for the taillights and the license plate, I went back and I did those in the same aluminum I used for the cover plates on the body, so that that will all match. And I didn't want that super bright chrome bumper on the rear of the car because there is no other chrome on the exterior of the car, and it just seemed like it would look a little discordant, out of place, however you choose to say. So that's that. You may be wondering why these are red. These are seen through the back of the wheel and the slots in the wheels, so that will give a nice contrast there as well. And that now really is the end of what I was going to say for paint. Okay, so that's that. Going to start building. Okay, so looking at the kit, I want to add a little floor detail. So driver side and what would be the passenger side. So fortunately, I have some of my handy Plastruct diamond plate sheet styrene. So I'm going to use that to make two pieces. So here I've cut them out, one small piece for the driver, one for the passenger side. And once I have them painted, I can still get in there, roll cage it all with the tweezers. I'll be able to drop them in place, glue them down, and they will be all set, and that should add a little something to dress up that very, very plain looking floor. So how did I go about cutting my two little pieces? No rocket science. Ruler, very simple, a pen to mark my measurements, and a plain old scissor to make my cuts. And that's it. 1, 2, 3, done. Nice little additional detail to add to the kit. Okay, so here we go. As you can tell, assembly is basically done. Now, normally, I just do the final build reveal all together. But for this one, I thought I would split it into pieces because the car is in two pieces. No, but seriously, to just talk about how this came out. So what I've done, I've already test fitted the body on there. It basically just drops right onto the chassis. Very simple, and basically just sits there. So it's a kit where if you want to display this really neat racing chassis, you don't have to consider the trade-off of mounting the body or having it on display. You can take the body on and off, because the body goes on very easily, comes off very easily. So it's just a matter of how you want to look at it at a particular point in time. And that's kind of why I'm doing this right now. So the body, obviously I have to do the decals, and then that will really be the final. And of course we do have this lovely decal sheet, which I will be putting to work to do that. Which brings up matters relating to this chassis. Now, in the beginning of this build, I did speak about this shield, this body interior body pad shield, which is the rear seat delete, and then fairing up to where the rear window sits, and this should sit in there. As I said, I opted, after all the work, to get this all sighted up and hollowed out to fit. I'm actually not going to use that, nor am I going to use this shroud, which is supposed to sit inside the interior to cover up the exhaust pipe, and then the rearview mirror sits on top. And the reason I have opted out of using those parts is I wanted to see this. I want to see this chassis because I just think this is so cool. And in this kit, it builds up really nicely. So, as I said in the beginning, I am partial to this kind of a build with the roll cage and, sort of an anatomical look at a car. And this is done, the kit is done very well. So you end up with this really neat end product. And, I didn't do anything crazy with it. It's basically built and painted out of the box. And the reason I left off those two plates, the rear seat delete and the shroud, I want to be able with this to look right in there and see all that suspension detail. Plus, I liked seeing the idea of the pipe coming, the exhaust pipes coming all the way through. I just think that is so, you know, I don't know, butch, crazy, whatever you want to call it. So this in itself, if this was the entire model, I'd be perfectly happy just having that on my shelf. Again, you know, these are my opinions, but you know, a lot of times, especially older kits, they build with the strict intention of the body sitting on top and then covering up any deficiencies of detail, which you then won't be able to see. But with this, as with any of these kits with the full roll cage and everything, you know, it's almost like, gee, you don't want to cover it up and lose that. So exactly to the point of, before I did the final reveal with the body on and all those lovely decals, I wanted to really show off this frame. Now, the only extra I did, as I indicated, was the diamond plate stock styrene to put that in there, and I just painted that with a Krylon satin nickel, and that was just to give a little detail to that floor because it was just a plain old slab, and you know, a little contrast to break up all the silver in there, and that's it. Now, as far as assembling this nifty little piece of road machinery, you know, it goes together well. I didn't have any problems assembling it per se, but what did surprise me, and really not in a negative way, but you know, it's definitely an assembly. You need tweezers to do this, and you really need to be careful sighting things up and making sure you're doing things properly so that it all comes together well. And it's not an assembly that gives you problems, but it is not an easy assembly. So it is a little complicated. You know, anytime you run into these roll cages, it is definitely an extra step in concern when you do the build in terms of getting it all to come together well. And being that it is an older kit, you know, some pieces, they're not 100% the way they line up. Back here with these little side braces that anchor the roll cage to the whole rear suspension support, they took a little finagling, and in the end they sat in there, and they do connect, and it's all tied together as a structure. But yeah, there are some things. Certainly you saw me using the tweezers quite a bit with the suspension elements in there, the front suspension, the rear suspension. You know, this is not hold it in your fingers and push it together. You can, but you're going to end up with a mess. So to do it neatly and have it come out, you know, I guess the way you would want to, is looking pretty good. Tweezers, yeah. Now the steering is supposed to be positionable. I did tack glue my steering knuckles because this tie rod and these pins are very delicate. And also I noticed my front wheels had a definite toe in, and I was playing with that tie rod to get them to track parallel, and it really wasn't cooperating much, and it was rather tight. I didn't even heat crimp this. I just pressed it on, and as you saw, I had to use the needle nose to get a couple of pieces cinched up, the tie rod included. You know, test fit, it looked like things were going to go together easy, and they did, but I found that getting that final full fit did take a little bit of extra persuasion from the needle nose. So just things to consider. Would I look at this as a starter kit for someone? I think not. I think you need to have maybe a few kits under your belt before jumping into this. Not because you wouldn't enjoy it, but I think more importantly, so that you get the full enjoyment out of it because you'll be comfortable with your building skills, and then you can appreciate what this has to offer. So considering that this is an older kit, I kind of say bravo to the kit design. And yeah, I am really liking the way this came out. So that is my little spiel on that. So like I said, gonna get into decals and get the body on, and then it will be the final build. Okay, and here we go with what is part 2 of the MPC Pontiac GTO Super Stocker. All right, and there we go. So I showed the chassis done, and now we have the body on with all the decals and clear coat. So, which is just the pledge floor polish, future floor polish, whatever, same deal. Now, 2 things to mention right off the bat, and one of them is probably obvious when you're looking at the car now. First one though, I had said I had test fitted the body before and went on, came off, no problem. What I didn't appreciate was when I went to fit the body on, because the tires are hollow and they just slide over the wheels, to make life a little bit easier, I just took the tires off. I put the body on so that, you know, there was less obstacle going into the fenders, and it didn't seem like there was an issue. It went in, no problem. Okay. Put the tires back on, and then when I went to put the body on again, I realized, oh, I didn't appreciate how close the pipe is to the tire, because without the tire, obviously it's not an issue. So in terms of what I had said before, taking the body on and off for display, if you want to do that, that is something you will have to consider, and that you will have to pop off that passenger side rear tire to get the body off because of the pipe, or cut the pipe so that it's a little bit shorter and doesn't protrude from that well quite so much, which, looking at it, is something I might just go back and do, which is not a big deal. Slice it, cut it off, and that's the end of that. The second thing, if you're looking at the way the wheels sit in the fenders, I built the car exactly according to the instructions, sighting the rear frame half to the body pan. You know, on visual look, which I did just to double check that I was locating it properly, it seemed like everything was going to go just fine. And I used the little joiner pieces that I had showed that attach from the roll cage to the rear suspension support. Those are the pieces specified. So the way I sighted it is the way, according to the instructions, you're supposed to sight it. However, looking at it now, this rear axle probably could use to be a couple of millimeters back, say 3-4 millimeters back, for these wheels to center a little bit in the hog outs. Not quite sure what happened there. I don't know, again, if that's most likely I mixed something up along the way. What else can I say? We are not all perfect, and I know I certainly am not. But even with that, and you know, it's kind of a minor thing. You know, in final look, I would like to see those wheels a little bit further back, but I'm not going to start taking the kit apart to redo it now. So it is what it is at this point, and that's that. And there's a lesson to be learned in that is sometimes you can pay all the attention to what you're doing, and hey, life is life, and the unexpected is what you have to deal with. A lesson I have been learning in the last few weeks. But that said, I am still really happy with the way this came out. I just think this looks so cool. Neat machine. I'm so happy I left out that internal shroud, because now, even with the hijinks with taking the tire off and trying to get the body off, I am probably really not inclined to be doing that. So it's on. I'm just going to leave it on. It's not glued in place or anything, but to the point of I'm so happy that shroud is not in there, because now I can still look in the car because we have big window space, big side viewing areas, and I can still see all that suspension detail in its glorious madcap detail on that rear end. So like that. Attaching this front crash guard is a little bit of a precarious fit because it's just a flush mount onto the pan of the nose inlets. It is not a strong connection. It's quite weak. I've already broken it twice just doing decals and putting the body on. So that is something to watch for. Certainly a delicate assembly. Otherwise, from what I noted before, really not a problem to put it together if you have a little experience. It's a fun kit. There's a lot you can do with color choices and this and that, and capturing all the detail. And again, to check out what's going on, we have a lot of nice detail on the suspension, rear suspension, the whole underbody, and of course into that engine compartment with that crazy exhaust system looping over the top of the engine. I said earlier is basically what caught my eye with this kit to begin with, because that was something I had not seen on any other kit, and that's pretty cool. So getting to do something different. A lot of my videos, I start off saying, today, a little something different. Well, it's fun to do different things. So there we go. So that is it. The MPC Pontiac GTO Super Stocker. If you see the kit, and like I said, you've had a little experience doing roll cages and things like that, or you have a little experience and you're ready to jump on something like this, fun kit, definitely recommend it. So enjoy. Meantime, gonna get started with the next build, and as always, enjoy your hobby, and thank you for watching.